Clerics and paladins worship gods that look down with great benevolence on their supposed creations and grant them abilities and gifts and boons to do good works or to amass more power for their gods. But you know that there are other beings, other creatures that were here when the gods were created, before the gods were so powerful. Those are who you choose to align yourself with. That's where the real power lies. Today I'm talking about the Great Old One's Warlock. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we're breaking out of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. We are doing a subclass deep dive on one of the original subclasses from the Player's Handbook, the Great Old One's Warlock. Now, I know you might be wondering what led me to pick this one to be the first subclass that I did a deep dive on past Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. We still have plenty of subclasses to go through, so those of you that have been requesting different subclasses from that book, don't fret. We will be returning to one of Tasha's subclasses next week. But today I wanted to shake things up a little bit. Go back to the roots of 5th edition and enjoy the Warlock, because my character is a Great Old One's Warlock and I wanted to look at the class deeper. Those of you that have been following the channel and watching all of our videos, first off, thank you. But you would also know that we have launched a brand new show on this channel, Kyber Shards, that the first 3 proper episodes have come out by the time that you're seeing this, along with character intros for most of the characters on the show. And we're going to be continuing on from there. And my character, Ari, is a half-elf Great Old One's Warlock. So I wanted to take some time, do a deep dive on this subclass to take a look at it and see why it shines, why I picked it, and why I think you'll like it too. So first off, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the subclass, let's go with an overview. So obviously, this is one of the original subclasses from the Player's Handbook for the Warlock. Obviously, you had the Fiend, the Archfey, and the Great Old One as your choices for the provider of your power, essentially, who your pact was with. And the Great Old One has always intrigued me a lot because of how amorphous it is. The Fiend Pact, you kind of know what you're signing up for. It's a demon or a devil that you signed a deal with for more power. Archfey, you stumbled into the Feywild and came upon an Archfey who bestowed you with power and sent you back to the material plane to do what you will. But what is the Great Old One? What is that? What does that mean? Every setting is going to have a different answer for that. Every game is going to have a different meaning. Every character, potentially, is going to treat the idea of a Great Old One vastly different. And I think that's why this subclass is so intriguing, because you can really make it what you want. You can do what you will with it. Any ancient being really could fall into this category. Now, I know from the flavor, we're talking kind of Cthulhu, ancient, like aberration, tear your mind apart, kind of Great Old One. But I think it's flexible enough to where an ancient dragon, a kraken that's lived below the sea for thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and has amassed power, also a possibility. And I think that's why I like this one. It provides the most narrative leeway for a player. And additionally, the power set is pretty darn cool. Having the ability to send telepathic messages to party members at level 1 is pretty great. I can speak from experience now on that. And the powers that you get, the way that you can flavor this subclass in a variety of ways, I think truly makes it one of the special standouts from the Player's Handbook choice of subclasses. So let's get into the class features and talk about what you get with this subclass before we get into the how to do it section of the video. So first off, at first level, you get 2 spells. You get Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Both of these make a lot of sense. And these are, by the way, added to your Warlock spell list. You don't get access to them right away. You still have to choose them as your known spell. They're just added in addition to the other choices you have as a Warlock. And I think both of these are really cool. And I think they serve very different functions that I'm going to get into in the how to play this subclass a little bit later in the video. So I'll get into that there of why I think this is an interesting place to start this subclass off in terms of their choices. But they both fit so well because the whole through line of the spells that you get access to are affecting the mind of others, tapping into the mind of others. Even the class features play into that. And so I think these two make a lot of sense. Obviously, Dissonant Whispers, they're hearing potentially what you hear in your head as a warlock of a Great Old One, and it does not go well for those who are not used to it. And then Tasha's Hideous Laughter, obviously causing somebody to laugh, fall on the ground, and basically, for all intents and purposes, become somewhat incapacitated for the duration of the spell. So I think both of these make sense, and I really like them. The class feature that you get at first level is Awakened Mind, and this is what I was talking about in the overview, the ability to have essentially a one-way link with a party member that's within 30 feet of you that you can see. And this goes for any creature that you can see. It doesn't have to be a party member specifically, obviously, but you don't have to share a language with the creature, but it does have to have an understanding of a language. So you can't do it's not speak with animals or anything like that. It has to be a creature capable of knowing a language in order for you to use this ability. But it's great. I mean, yes, it's one-way communication, but you're able to send messages to party members. If you're in a tense situation and your character is talking, because you're a warlock, so you're going to have a high charisma score, presumably. And so you're probably going to lean into the face of the party type role, unless you have somebody that really wants to do that, like a paladin. But if you're in that position and you're negotiating or something, you can send a message to your party members and be like, hey, here's what actually is going on, or here's what I'm thinking, or get ready, I think they're about to pull a knife on me. Stuff like that, which is great, being able to broadcast those kind of messages. And then at third level, once you get access to your second level spells on the Warlock spell list, you add Detect Thoughts and Phantasmal Force to that spell list as well. Once again, playing on this idea of affecting the minds of others. Obviously, Detect Thoughts speaks for itself, being able to tap into the minds of others and take information. Awaken Mind allows you to send information into somebody's mind. Now, with a spell slot, you can pull something out of somebody's mind, essentially. And then also with Phantasmal Force, this I really like, and this is how I tend to flavor a lot of the other spells on the Warlock spell list, or the Eldritch Invocations that you get as a Warlock. I just got second level, and so I picked the Mask of Many Faces, Disguise Self, at will. And the way that I'm going to play that is not that I have the ability to magically alter my appearance. It's that I can put my appearance into somebody else's head and they'll see me a certain way. And I can kind of broadcast it to people around me. Mechanically, it's disguise self, but you're flavoring it in a certain way to where you're projecting these images to other people. And that's exactly what Phantasmal Force is, obviously. That you have the capacity to create this thing inside a 10-foot cube that if they fail their save, they think is real. And even if there's a logical inconsistency with the thing, they will somehow justify that the thing is actually there and that it was their mistake or something like that. So once again, thematically fits perfectly and is a really useful spell in a lot of situations. So I really like it. And at fifth level, you get Clairvoyance and Sending. So these still continue to play well into the idea of affecting others' minds and being able to get information from their minds and all kinds of stuff. So I don't think that we need to spend too much time thinking about how these fit well into the Great Old One spell list. Once you get third level spells, you can have these as available options to you. Though with Clairvoyance, I do think it's interesting, this idea of almost like taking a piece of your mind and leaving it behind. Almost, it's an interesting way to think about how you can flavor this, because obviously you're just having the capacity to look somewhere that you normally wouldn't be able to, somewhere that you're not present. So I think the interesting thing about Clairvoyance is this idea that you can either project your mind back to a place that you've been before within 1 mile, or reach your mind out to a nearby place that you're not familiar with, just past the door, just around the corner, that kind of thing. And maybe the idea being that if there are creatures behind that door, you're using their senses, you're feeling their minds and using their senses to see around. There's a lot of different ways that you can talk through this, but I do think thematically it does fit well. And then at 6th level, you gain another class feature, Entropic Ward. This gives you the ability when an enemy is attacking you, making an attack roll against you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on that roll. And if they miss, you then have advantage on your next attack roll against them, as long as you do it before the end of your turn. And you can do this once per short or long rest. And so this one is interesting because you initially look at it and you're like, how does this thematically fit into the through line of the rest of the class? And I think you once again have to think about it as imposing your will onto somebody else's mind. Of when you're doing this, you're physically, not physically, mentally affecting their capacity to attack you, and in doing that, leaving them open for an attack against you. So the idea being that maybe you project an image of yourself just slightly to the left, and so they swing their sword down at the wrong thing, and they're left kind of staggered and stunned as you come in with your attack roll, or something like that. Or you just physically, like, by affecting their mind, like slow their arm down kind of a way. Not telekinesis, still telepathy, but you're affecting their motor skills by affecting their brain. That kind of thing, I think, is a really interesting way that you could flavor this particular class feature. And before we move on, if you are enjoying this video and finding it all helpful, please be sure to like the video and subscribe down below. It would help out so much. And if you want to talk to me in real time about all of this, I do stream on Twitch every Sunday and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central and Saturdays at 7 a.m. Come by, hang out. I would love to have you. And then at 7th level, you get Dominate Beast and Evard's Black Tentacles. Dominate Beast, pretty obvious. You're putting your will into the mind of a beast, being able to take over their consciousness, their intelligence, whatever you want to say, and take control of them for a bit. And then with Evard's Black Tentacles, this is the first one that I think is really kind of okay. The source of your pact is like coming to attack kind of thing. Because once again, when we think about the Great Old One as intended, based on the flavor text in the player's handbook, we tend to lean towards the Cthulhu type monster with the tentacles and all that stuff. So you're almost summoning one of their minions onto this hero plane to attack for you. And that's absolutely one way that you can play this if you're going that route. Another way that you can play this, if you're going to take this spell, once again, you don't have to, it's just added to your spell list. So for Ari on Kyber Shards, probably not going to take Evard's Black Tentacles, being perfectly honest, because I don't thematically think it goes with what I'm trying to build. But I might, and you could flavor it as just, once again, you are projecting something that isn't real, but certain people within the range of the spell believe it's real and are affected by it, and kind of that mind over matter thing of it doesn't matter if I actually hit you with a club. If you think I hit you with a club and your brain believes I hit you with a club, you're still going to be in pain, kind of thing. So if you believe that the tentacle came out of the ground and whacked you, then the tentacle came out of the ground and whacked you. And at 9th level, you get Dominate Person and Telekinesis. So obviously Dominate Person is that progression from Dominate Beast that I like so much in these subclasses. And then Telekinesis, you're finally able to use your powers to affect the physical world around you. And obviously there are ways that you could flavor this kind of ability prior to gaining telekinesis with a spell like Unseen Servant or something, and say that it's just your telekinesis doing that. That's an option, but telekinesis actually gives you the ability to use it in a more offensive manner, which is really cool. And then at 10th level, you get Thought Shield, and this is probably one of my favorite class features for this class. Firstly, your thoughts cannot be read telepathically unless you allow it. Your mind is blocked off to the invasive nature of others and their minds, which is super cool, building up kind of that safeguard. And then additionally, you have resistance to psychic damage. And if somebody deals psychic damage to you, they take the same damage right back. They take the same amount of damage you do. So you have resistance, so they'll only take half damage. But that's still a really cool power, and I really like thematically this idea of you finally gained enough control over your mind that you are able to block everything else out and prevent other people from reading your thoughts and harming your mind. I think that's really cool and thematically is a great progression for this subclass. And then at 14th level, boy, if there was ever a reason to put off multi-classing until you hit 14th level, Create Thrall is one of them. So at 14th level, you gain the ability to infect a humanoid's mind with yours. The wording in the source material is the alien magic of your patron, but obviously, depending on how you flavor this, it might be just your own will that you are infecting this individual with. So, an incapacitated creature, you can use an action to touch them. At that point, they are charmed by you. They have the charm condition as it relates to you. And this stops when the remove curse spell is used on them, the charmed condition is removed from them, or you use this feature again. That's it. No time limit, nothing. If you want to sneak into a high-ranking politician's chambers at night, knock them out, and incapacitate them, and then infect them, and then leave, and then once they're healed by their house guards or whatever and wake up, none the wiser, wondering, well, nobody stole anything, so I don't know what happened in the middle of the night. Maybe I just fell. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I just fell and bumped my head. They're charmed by you, and they have no idea. And while you two are on the same plane of existence, you can communicate telepathically with them. Wow. So this is a super cool ability, super flavorful, and I think of all the different ways that you can use this in a campaign to get the upper hand in a certain situation, whether it's incapacitating the lieutenant of a villain and using your action to touch them and then leaving, allowing them to be picked up and healed by your villain's minions and taken back. And they're charmed by you. They like you. You're their friend. And I know mechanically charmed has very specific meanings. They can't attack you or cause any harm to come to you essentially by their own hand. And you have advantage on ability checks in social situations with them. I know that those are the two mechanical benefits, but if you all have been watching this series, then you know that mechanics, for me, are there to enforce the flavor and the story being told. And I don't know about you, but if there was a creature that was unwilling to hurt me, and if I'm trying to persuade them or lie to them or intimidate them, I have advantage, whatever that would look like in the real world. I'm going to consider that a friendly relationship to some extent, or they're just very gullible or scared of me, which is also possible, but then that's frightened, and that's a whole other thing that you can do. So yeah, charmed condition, I would treat it as they think positively of you. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And maybe if you've done it to their lieutenant, their second in command, when you show up for the big final boss fight and then their lieutenant refuses to attack you. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Because also, this is not a charm person situation. You have not cast charm person on this entity. They're just charmed by you. So the normal conditions of damage being done to it by allies or something like that doesn't automatically break the charmed condition. Now, obviously, within the context of the story, probably some things would be happening, but all that beside itself, I think this is a really cool ability, and I'm excited to hit 14th level with my character. Okay, now let's talk about playing a Great Old One Warlock. So obviously this is a character who has the capacity to touch other people's minds in a very potentially destructive way. And so one way that you can play this type of character is somebody who in the early stages of leveling are trying to come to grips with their power and what they're capable of doing and how devastating they can be. I mean, at first level with Dissonant Whispers, you can cast or you can deal 3d6 damage, which depending on certain enemies is just going to take them out in a heartbeat. And so I like the idea of having this kind of morality built into your spell choices and what you're casting and what you're doing to other people. Because, like I said before, with the first level spells that are added to your Warlock spell list, Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, those two serve very different functions. Dissonant Whispers deals a hefty amount of damage for first level, and it causes them to run in a certain direction. And that can be effective for getting them out of the way or something like that. But you are dealing damage. You are doing it in a way that is harmful to them. Whereas Tasha's Hideous Laughter, yes, is an invasion of their mind, and you're causing them to fall to the ground, laugh, and be effectively incapacitated, but you're not dealing any damage. It's a very non-lethal spell. It's a way to take somebody out of a fight, take somebody out of a dangerous situation without harming them. And that's an interesting dichotomy of those two spells that are first presented to you in this Warlock subclass. It's almost like, which path are you going to take? Are you going to deal damage and harm people with your powers? Or are you going to try to use your powers in a way that you still can control a situation that's dangerous, but you're not harming people? And obviously there's going to be situations where you're in combat and people are trying to kill you and you're dealing damage, and I'm not talking about that. But circumstances are going to come up where you have this ability, and which one are you going to do? And so I think that's a really interesting story that you can tell with this subclass. And there's a lot of spells all the way through that allow you to do things to people without dealing damage, whether it's using your presumably fairly high social skills, or doing things like your telepathy to try and like convince somebody to take off and run, and stuff like that. So, and then that can even feed into how you use your create thrall ability and how you are utilizing that. And are you doing it in such a way to where you are effectively removing somebody's free will, or are you doing it to people that it wouldn't really affect them to be charmed by you? They're already charmed by you in a sense that they are your ally, and so this is just a way to give you telepathy, or telepathy with them. You can communicate as long as you're on the same plane. Yes, they're going to have a higher opinion of you, but they would have already had a decent opinion anyway. At least that's how you could justify it to yourself. And then additionally, you could play this subclass as a literal vessel for your patron, that your mind is shared essentially. And whatever the Great Old One is for your version of this subclass, it literally resides within your mind. And so when you do something like Dissonant Whispers, it's just you sharing this mind that resides in your head. And when it's sprung on somebody, it does not go well. Or same with Tasha's Hideous Laughter, that you're just using this aberrant kind of mind to infect other people, essentially. I think that's another interesting way that you can play it. This idea of having this infected, well, not infected, just another entity residing within you is very interesting. Now let's talk about parties that this subclass could work well in. Now, obviously, party composition of subclasses that have also been like touched by other planes, like the Horizon Walker Ranger, Way of the Astral Self Monk, Clockwork Soul, or Shadow Magic Sorcerer, all could be components of a very interesting build of a party and a style of campaign where everybody has been affected by another plane of existence. If your Great Old One is from a plane that has aberrations or this kind of weird magic stuff going on. And so that could be a really interesting party to get going and start to do a campaign where you all have to reconcile the fact that you have been touched by these other planes and they've affected you in very real ways. And then also, this subclass is somebody with telepathy and telekinesis that is fueled by a greater entity that potentially resides within their mind. So if you're doing an X-Men style campaign, then just you're Jean Grey. This is Jean Grey. You're the Phoenix. You got the Phoenix fueling your powers, and you can do stuff with your mind and hurt other people's minds. And potentially, if you play it the way that I talked about before, you can sometimes be destructive unintentionally. So yeah, you're just Jean Grey. And I know that Kyber Shards is loosely, well, not loosely, it's very definitively X-Men-esque in nature, but that's not to say that I'm playing Ari like Jean Grey. That would be disingenuous, although Philip did reference Jean Grey when I explained my character to him. So, yeah. I mean, it's similar, but it's not what I'm going for. You should watch the show. Link right there. And lastly, how to DM well for this subclass. So, I'm going to get kind of a bit broader here and just talk about warlocks in general. And I didn't really get into this with the Fathomist Warlock, but warlocks can be pretty tricky to DM for. I think that this class requires the most conversation between a DM and a player prior to a campaign for really any kind of warlock, because you have to determine what that relationship looks like, because at some point the dungeon master is going to represent the source of your pact, basically. And so you all have to figure out what that looks like. How involved is this entity going to be in the campaign, in sessions themselves? Are you as a player wanting to dictate most of the story and what the relationship is like, or are you willing to hand the reins over to your dungeon master and allow your knowledge as a player and your knowledge as a character to go hand in hand? You don't know what's going on, your character doesn't fully know what's going on, and the dungeon master is going to give you information as they see fit. So there's a lot of different things that as a dungeon master you need to consider anytime a player is bringing a warlock to you, but even more so with a Great Old One's Warlock, because, like I said at the very beginning of this video, this is a very amorphous source of a pact. With a fiend, with an archfey, like I said, those are fairly concrete in most D&D settings, but Great Old One isn't so concrete. So you definitely need to sit down with your player and be like, okay, what are you thinking in turn? Not what are you thinking, but what are you thinking this looks like? What is the Great Old One? Are you going with kind of what's in the source material, or are you wanting to do something different? Because that's going to affect, obviously, as a dungeon master, how you portray the source of the pact and things like that moving forward, and how you can kind of craft the personal story for this character moving forward and what their pact looks like. So definitely anytime there's a warlock involved, have those conversations, but especially for the Great Old One Warlock, because you need to figure out what your player wants out of this subclass, what a Great Old One looks like in your setting in their head, so you can establish that and then move forward. And then additionally, once all of those parameters have been set up, I would play a Great Old One as fairly incomprehensible, even obtuse in nature. Maybe the things that they're asking of their pact bearer don't necessarily make sense. Maybe it's like, hey, off this road here, in this little cluster of trees, there's a stone circle. It's just a bunch of rocks in a circle there. I just need you to go kick one of the stones out of the circle. That's all you need to do. And you're just like, okay. And so you go kick the stone, and then you continue on your path, not realizing that that was like a druidic seal that was set up or something, and meant to look unassuming, and you've just broken a seal or something like that. So doing things like that, or like, hey, this restaurant is preparing to cater a wedding. I need you to go steal the chicken. It's like, okay. And you don't have to explain all of this. It's just clearly this entity that they have saddled themselves with has machinations that are incomprehensible to the mortal mind, is what I'm getting at. So that can be a really fun and interesting way to DM for this subclass. So what did you all think? Did you enjoy this video? Once again, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you did. And if you want to talk to me about this, we do have a Discord link down in the description down there. If you want to come over there and talk to me, we have a great community over there. We talk D&D, food, pets, video games, movies, all kinds of stuff. So come over, hang out there. We would love to have you. Thank you all so much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.